Ireland had been divided into 32 counties. 9 of these counties made up the northern province of Ulster. Ulster had been a massive point of resistance against English rule during the late medieval period. Its natural barriers of lakes, mountains, hills and forests made it very defendable. The 9 Years' War saw the Gaelic chieftains O'Donnells and O'Neills fight against the forces of Queen Elizabeth I. They ultimately lost, and after some political power plays by King James I, the Gaelic chieftains left Ireland, never to return, leaving Ulster up for grabs. King James organised the plantation of Ulster, planting English and Scottish settlers. The planters were Protestant, which divided them all the more from the native Gaelic Catholics. This religious and cultural divide deepened over the centuries, often resulting in violence. The identity of Protestant Ulstermen solidified through organisations such as the Orange Order. This has been covered in more detail in my other videos. After a failed Republican rebellion in 1798, led mainly by Protestants I might add, history wasn't all black and white, Ireland was brought into the Union with Great Britain, becoming the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. After a century of being ruled directly from London and a horrific mismanagement of potato blight in Ireland during the 1840s, resulting in the population being halved in just a few decades, Ireland wanted a parliament back in Dublin, but not the loyal Protestant Unionists of Ulster, who believed Ireland would be run by the Catholic Church. The Unionists signed the Ulster Covenant, threatening war if Home Rule happened. But World War I broke out, Home Rule was put on hold, and Irish Republicans in Dublin staged a massive rebellion in 1916, resulting in a growing support for an Irish Republic, in the south at least. When the Irish War of Independence broke out in 1919, many Unionists in Ulster were sure they wanted no part in an Irish Republic. As fighting went on, Westminster also tried to decide what would be done about the Irish question. It would have been easier to give Ireland some form of home rule with a parliament in Dublin, but the Irish Unionist Party kicked up such a fuss that it was decided that Ireland would be divided into North and South, and thus Northern Ireland was created with a parliament in Belfast. The Republican Party of Sinn Féin refused to take their seats in Westminster, so the British plan was very out of touch with Republican ideals. Not all 9 counties of Ulster would be part of the new state. The Unionists decided that they could not control Donegal, Cavan or Monaghan politically. So, after a little gerrymandering, the 6 counties of Derry, or Londonderry as it is known to the Unionists, Antrim, Down, Armagh, Tyrone and Fermanagh became the 6 counties of Northern Ireland in 1921. The border between north and south followed the county borders, which often follows rivers, lakes and streams, but not always, resulting in some odd borders, particularly the road between Clones and Butler's Bridge, in which you cross the border 4 times in just over 10 kilometres. Some towns were even divided in 2 by the border. This would have been fine with the initial Westminster plan of Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland remaining part of the United Kingdom, so the border would be like travelling from England into Wales, but the negotiations following the War of Independence resulted in the Irish Free State, which would remain a dominion of the British Empire like Australia or Canada. Northern Ireland wanted no part of this and immediately opted out in December 1922. After the Irish Free State had sorted itself out in a brutal civil war, a boundary commission was established to try and work out a better arrangement for the border, proposing certain territories be transferred either side of the border, depending on their politics. The plans were leaked, uproar from nationalists and unionists ensued, ultimately no changes were made. During the 1920s and 30s, customs checks did exist along the border. Passports were needed along the border during World War II. In the 1960s, massive civil rights marches about discrimination against Catholics escalated into violence, which became known as the Troubles. The British Army came in 1969, and as increased terrorist activity intensified, military checkpoints were set up along the border. The border has over 260 road crossings. Many unapproved roads were blocked completely by the British Army. A monument of a JCB was erected in 1992 along the border between Cavan and Fermanagh, remembering the efforts of locals to keep the border open despite the army efforts. As tax and currency was different on either side of the border, smuggling was a common practice. Ireland and the United Kingdom joined what would become the European Union in 1973. By the 1990s, the Troubles came to an end, resulting in the Good Friday Agreement, which allowed for peace. The ability to be an Irish citizen, a British citizen, or both was granted to everyone in Northern Ireland, giving everyone, nationalist and unionist, the best of both worlds. The agreement also stated that if ever the majority of people of Northern Ireland wish to join the rest of Ireland, the British government will allow the change. A power-sharing government of Northern Ireland allowed for nationalists and unionists to make decisions together. It took a long while for the Democratic Unionist Party to agree to this, but when they did, Northern Ireland had a functioning government. The border checkpoints were phased out and the border became almost invisible. Today, it's only often noticed by small differences in road markings and signposts, which indicate the crossing of the border, with many people making the crossing daily in their regular day-to-day life. And then the Brexit vote happened. The UK referendum to leave the European Union in 2016 threw a lot of questions on the Northern Ireland border. Questions the people of Northern Ireland had been shouting about all the way through the campaign. This was the only land border between the UK and the rest of the EU. Northern Ireland, as well as Scotland, voted in the majority to remain in the EU. Any form of a hard border could give dissident Republicans a target and result in an escalation into violence which nobody wants. In long negotiations with the EU, British Prime Minister Theresa May negotiated the backstop, which guarantees whatever happens with the UK leaving the EU, a hard border will not be put in place. This was complicated by May's government being propped up by the Democratic Unionist Party, who are against a border along the Irish Sea, which would be one of the simplest solutions. Sinn Féin, on the other hand, had been flirting with the solution being a united Ireland. New British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has thrown all of this up into question again, looking to renegotiate deals with the EU and proposing customs checks between the Republic and Northern Ireland away from the border itself, and yet another regulatory check between the North and the rest of the UK as goods move out of the single market. All of this being dependent on the Northern Ireland Assembly agreeing to this every 4 years. The EU, however, was not impressed by this. Boris Johnson seemed to be driving the UK towards Brexit at the end of October, deal or no deal. However, Johnson does seem to have backed down. The news changes day by day as it all unfolds, which is why I usually avoid current affairs. The United Kingdom seems to be anything but united on this. There's not even a functioning assembly in Northern Ireland, as the DUP and Sinn Féin can't agree on an Irish language bill since 2017. Yay, democracy! As someone who lives 20 minutes from the border on the Republic side, I do actually have a personal stake in this. I didn't have a vote in Brexit. I was on the wrong side of the border for that. And yet the effects of this referendum could be massive on my life and on my work. I was lucky enough to grow up in a time of relative peace in Ulster. But that peace is delicate. That peace was hard won. And that peace has often threatened to be torn apart. Personally, I hope the United Kingdom remains in the European Union. We are all much stronger together. We're all one big European family. And families, on occasion, can have their arguments. But whenever you're ready, I, for one, hope that you can take your place back at the table. The world is heating up in much more ways than one, and we all need to deal with it together. We are stronger together. Of course, you watching in the future know exactly how all of this panned out. I hope that whatever happens, that it's peaceful. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. A massive thank you to all my patrons on Patreon. I shall be thanking you all by name at the end of this video. If you wish to support me on Patreon, I will be adding more features and doing more exclusive live streams on there soon, so pop on over. I have started a second channel, John D Ruddy Does Stuff, which will have content less related to the Manny Man Does History videos. There I will be talking about movies, video games, and also some podcasts, which I have had in production for some time. Go over and subscribe and be the first to see all my new content there. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Check out my website johndruddy.com for updates and loads of new merchandise, including these fun t-shirts. My books about Irish history are available from Gill Books. To my supporters on Patreon, I'd like to thank Alexander Odovich, Alexander, Arthur Revan, Avi, Baxter Millam, Brian Gitman, Cameron Coyle, Camilla the T.C. Schrader, Carl Alexson, Carol Basil, Caroline Hahn, Kara Tiza, Chuck Lynn, Colton Sayer, Kwang Nguyen Tan, Dana Bates, Daniel Epstein, David Morrissey, David Strnad, Doug Bass, Drew White, Dustin Holden, Epic History TV, Flecky, Frank Faringer, Gerardo Guel, Grant Hughes, Graydon Swedberg, Hrodgaard, James Ellis, Jason Romine, Jay Mercier, Jens Vertgeval, Joe Benavides, Joe Robertson, Joseph Mariani, Jubbs, Catherine Schmiedecke, Keithus, Lapre chez Queen Vara, Laura Matthews, Lego SWAT, M, Mad Scientist Assistant, Mario A. Gallardo, Marcus Booker, Martin Hunenwag, Matt Brown, Matthew Marlowe, Max Ago, Mike Wise, Monday Rico, Mr. Magnificent, Mr. Easy Play 2, Myth Nguyen, Oli Corse, Raymond Marchand, Rocket Wrench, Ryan Lano, Simon Schrader, Sina Yegane, Soars, Some Dude, Stephanie Lenz, Steve Armit, Tanme, Theophilus Kilmunnis. What a great name. Some of you have been supporting me for months, some for years. I am hugely grateful for this, and I aim to read out the Patreon Roll of Honour at the end of future videos.